Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about what happens if you need to dewater your site. In other words, when you're digging a site, and it can be any size really, and you hit some groundwater, perched water, some natural water that occurs in the ground, how do you get rid of it? Well, for most it costs a little bit of time and some substantial money on projects like this. But it also requires thinking ahead and making a plan. Sometimes the water, as in this case, is contaminated with different types of chemicals and just products of the city around you and the land around you. So you have to run it through a treatment system, and this has all been planned out ahead of time. And so we've got a tank here that basically the water pumps into. You can see in the field there we've trenched and placed some wells, and then it's being pumped up into the tank. So this is kind of a reservoir, a holding tank. It doesn't do anything besides just basically hold the water, and then there's a gauge on the side. It goes from empty to full. We've got floats established inside that when it gets to about half to 2/3, it'll trip on. Then we've got a pump that pumps it into these filters. We've actually got 4. We've got pre-filters and then these main filters that takes out the vast majority of the contaminants. Now this is all runoff of this generator, which is an important part of it. Sometimes you take for granted, where am I getting the power? Well, in our instance, our power is very limited to the back side of the site. So we've opted to rent a generator, and they refuel it about every 3 to 4 days. There's not a lot of pull demand on this. We've got 6 pumps working in the ground right now. After it goes through the filtration system, you can see here there's a pipe coming out straight down. It goes completely out to the outside of the curb. Basically what it does is it daylights in the curb, it dumps into the street, runs down the street to the nearest storm drain inlet. Many cities will require you to get a permit to tap this in underground into your sewer or your storm drain system. This all has to be done, checked with and approved way before you get to this process. So that's something to bring up, that for instance on this site we did test wells a long time ago. We saw where the water table was, then we knew where our pad was going to be, and so we went ahead and pursued getting a permit, NPEDS permit, and going through the proper channels so that when we got here and we needed to dewater, number one, we were approved to do so. We had a plan. In other words, our plan had to describe where the wells were going to be approximately, how we were going to pump it up, how are we going to store it, how are we going to filter it, and where our power is coming from, and then finally, how are we going to discharge it. If you cover those things ahead of time by doing the test borings, the drilling, and you know where your water is, it saves you a lot of time and a lot of headache trying to catch up. We're down in the hole now of our excavated pad. You can see there what I have, this riser coming up that actually extends below this grade here, probably another 8 feet. What we've done is, prior to this, when the dirt level, the soil level was about level with that pipe, we had crew come in and trench. So we trenched down here and we placed rock all the way around this area. We placed these risers at certain intervals so that basically with the rock pocket down in there, the water percolates through it, and it's being drawn to these points by the pumps. The pumps have actually been lowered down in there. They're submersible pumps. We've got power to them that runs to the generator up on the hill. The pumps then pipe it out. We've hard piped all this around We've hung it off of our shoring walls, and it is being pumped up to the tank up on top where we store the water and then we filter it and discharge it. Now, one of the important things to do is when you're considering dewatering on this system is finding out what the city's requirements are first. How are you going to do it? Come up with a plan. Hire a contractor that knows how to deal with these cities well. You can't just throw something in the ground and hope it works. In this instance, they did a nice job. As you can see, everything's dry. Now, if I were to turn off those pumps, in a matter of probably 2 days, the water would be at the level of that pipe. So I'm standing right now, my groundwater would be approximately 3 foot higher than my dry dirt now. So that's why we calculated. I got to dig footings in here. Where's the bottom of my footing? Go past that so that we have a dry, firm, unyielding surface in order to pour the concrete, place rebar, yada yada. So I've had to calculate how far down do I need to go to dewater and keep the water low enough to then proceed with my construction. It's best to have many minds on that. You don't want to just do it in the field and scale it off, which is good. Double check it, but also use your consultants for things like this. Your dewatering contractor is going to be your number one choice to ask his opinion, what's worked in the past. Usually they'll know the area, they'll know the type of soil. Ask your consultants that do your soil tech, your geological techs, and also your engineers. You want to get everybody involved, your architects, structural engineers, and let them know how to proceed and let them have input, because you don't want to do this wrong. It costs enough money to put this in that you don't want to retrench and then start all over again. You don't want to start digging your footings and find water, stop the job, and then retrench all around. So what we've done, and we'll be showing this in the weeks to come, we've got our dewatering all in place. It's working well. In the next couple weeks, we'll start digging our footings. That's when you're going to really see, did we do a good job? So here we are. We're dewatering, and this has been going on for some time now. We're ready to start digging our footings and starting our concrete. We've got a nice dry, firm pad that's been certified by the surveyor, number one, and then also approved by the city and their soils tech. So you've got to have those three people on board with actually starting, after your dewatering, actually starting to dig your footings. You've made it dry, you've had the soils tech come out, you've had the surveyor come out, certify pad, you have your city inspectors come out, they look at it, they look at your form, you've got to have those letters ready and those sign-offs ready to hand to them, so that then you can say, okay, am I ready to start digging my footings? In this case, we most likely are. And that's it. That's a little bit of overview of dewatering. And we'll go through a few more details as far as what we're taking out here in this instance and what the usual process is. You don't always need to filter it. If you have the water tested, and again, that's an important part, before you set up this whole system and you decide what to do, when you find groundwater, have your consultant, some kind of environmental testing agency, and go out, take some samples, analyze it, and then turn that into the city. That would be your first step before you do any of this. Find out what you have in your water, and then determine, and they will determine for you, do you need to filter it? Can it go into your storm drain? Can it go into your sewer? Will they even allow this? In this case, they don't want it in the sewer. They want it on the street into the storm drain. So a little bit different scenario for a lot of different construction sites, but dewatering, if I can emphasize one thing, dewatering, don't get too quick to just pump the water out. The fines are expensive, and the delays for your job site are going to be expensive as well. So try to, ahead of time, determine, do I have groundwater? Can I pump it? What's in the groundwater? And what are going to be the city's requirements? Before you even get to this point, you should know those things.